Whoa, hey
Whoa.
Katie.
Hey James, how are you?
I'm good. That one sneaks up on you. It's like, whoa, it's like on. There's like no music fade at all. It's just like it's on. Let's
No,
do
it's like
it.
boom. I know some of the
Yeah.
other ones you have that cool animation that takes you through. I was ready. I was like, what's the let's learn animation? But it's just us,
Just hanging out. I'm James. I'm a program manager on a developer community team, and with me is
Katie, and I'm also a program manager on the developer community team, although James is actually my boss. So, wah, wah. No, it's
what? Wow.
good.
What even is a program manager? Nobody knows, Katie. It's a mystery.
No, you're not going to learn today because today is not about program managers. What's it about, James?
It's about GitHub Copilot. Da, 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 da.
Woo!
Yeah, so what we wanted to do kind of is kick off the kind of new season of Let's Learn .NET with some of the cool stuff that's happening, not just to build applications, like to infuse your applications with AI or build Blazor apps or build Maui apps, but actually like things that everybody can use no matter what you're building inside of the IDE of your choice, whether you're using VS Code, whether you're using Visual Studio or Code Spaces. Some of the new AI productivity features that maybe you've tried before or missed out on. And the reason we want to do this because there's a new GitHub Copilot free edition. Katie, did you know that?
I did know that. And actually, we've seen a ton of super excited people signing up for it for the first time. I mean, I know I've heard GitHub Copilot for months and months now and gotten to try bits and pieces, but ever since it was free, it was like, wow, I can really use all the coolness inside of all of my apps.
Yeah, and it's great because it's pretty fully featured and it works inside of GitHub Code Spaces, which are also free, which is super rad. So we're going to take a look and we're going to do everything today inside of GitHub Code Spaces. So you will need a GitHub account. So what we're going to do today is we have some slides. We're going to give you some context, tell you about what GitHub Copilot is, why you may want to use it, part of your development cycle. We're going to answer questions along the way. And then additionally, we're going to actually do some live coding. Like we're going to spin up some code spaces. We're going to learn about some of the different features of GitHub Copilot. And then at the end, we're all going to try to build a mini game, Katie. And I haven't actually done it yet at all. I know I built this workshop and modified it from the original Copilot workshop, but I didn't actually try it. Did you try to do it at all?
I didn't actually try it because I kind of wanted to go in fresh
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
just number one, see how you and I fare with the mini game, but also, do a little bit of crowdsourcing. I'm hoping we get some good participation for the game and, practice that prompt engineering on the spot with everybody.
Yeah, James and Katie play Pokemon. Let's do it. Okay, well, let's get into GitHub Copilot. What do you think there, Katie?
Let's do it.
Okay, cool. Well, here's what we're going to talk about today. Basically, we have a few different sections. We have 3 different labs that we're going to be doing. I'm going to give you a quick little overview. We'll talk about how to get started. What do you need? Not only for today, but just like a part of your development cycle. And then we'll talk a little bit about prompt engineering, little tips and tricks, and some FAQ as well. So a lot of people like have questions about like how things work, how things like where things are going, X, Y, Z. And we want to give you that context so you kind of know, and we'll answer questions along the way too. All right, let's talk about GitHub Copilot. First and foremost, like what is GitHub Copilot? We get this question all the time. And really, it's an AI-powered code completion tool that helps developers write code faster. I'd say like that's part of it. Like if you were in an elevator with your boss and you're like, what is it? And then that's what Katie would say. But it's actually a lot more than that because GitHub Copilot is sort of everywhere. And at the same time, not only helps you write code faster, but you can ask questions about your code. You can have it suggest full features and refactor your code, write documentation for you. It's only available in your IDE, but it's also available on github.com. They just released a terminal extension for Windows Terminal, so you can have GitHub Copilot in your terminal. It's kind of everywhere all at the same time. Is there any places that I'm missing that it's not, Katie?
No, I mean, like James said, it's really everywhere. And I think one of the things that this definition also leaves out is that it's a really great learning tool. So if you're either new to a code base or just new in general and trying to, get a lay of the land, you can just ask Copilot Chat any of your questions and work with it to figure out exactly what you're missing, the context you need to know to really set yourself up for success.
Yeah, and it evolves really fast as the AI landscape does as well. There's new models that are coming out to help with code completion, and then The code completions get better. Obviously, it supports all different types of programming languages. We're going to use C# today, obviously. But if you're doing, polyglot programming, you're doing some Python here and there, it's going to help out with all that. And I think also can really help you, like you said, learn new programming languages too. So I think that's what's super duper helpful. So the question is, who is it for? It's for everyone, Katie.
Woo!
And this is like some of the definitions from like this deck that was in there. But, I think obviously, like based on where you're at in your learning journey and your development journey, it's going to help you, right? If you're brand new, and you want to get up to speed on a code base that you're jumping into, like that's helpful not for just for junior engineers, but that's like anyone joining and starting any new programming at all. But obviously, one of the things it can really help with is boilerplate code. It can help you refactor. It can like go and help you debug. It can help you profile your applications and a lot more based on the IDE that you're in. So basically, it's for everybody. That's what I like.
Yeah.
So what do you get with it? Well, you get a whole bunch of stuff. Like in general, the things that you think about are things such as like the ghost text, as we call it, like filling in space. But it also provides this sort of code suggestions and contextualized to your project, right? So it knows about the code and the files that you have open. So it can reference your variables. It can convert comments to code. It can autofill repetitive code. It can show alternatives. It can give you code suggestions on them. And basically it can go through and it is able to give you those suggestions, but contextualized to your project. Now we're going to start with a new project. So as we're building our project out, it's going to learn about our code base and give us suggestions based off of it. So that's what we're going to kind of like dive through today. And there's two things with Copilot, and I'd say a lot more too, but the things that you normally think about is Copilot and Copilot chat. And specifically, Copilot itself is sort of the umbrella, GitHub Copilot, of all the things. But really, this is the core engine that is providing the code suggestions inside of your IDE and code editor of choice. And then GitHub Copilot chat is another extension that comes bundled together, but it's like a window off to the side where you can ask questions. You can highlight text. You can have it refactor the code, for example, in your project. There's extensions, so you can like ask at Visual Studio, if you're in Visual Studio, or at GitHub, you can ask specific questions about how GitHub or how Visual Studio work. And it'll provide context, just like if you're using like ChatGPT, for example, or a Copilot, Microsoft Copilot chat, for example. You can ask questions about the code and about general programming things, and it will bring that back to you. But on top of Copilot chat, there's an edit mode. And the edits mode allows you to have that chat type of conversation with Copilot and have it give you code suggestions that you can apply across multiple files in your project, which is really cool. And there's a new mode called agent mode, which is kind of like a software engineer agent that sits there and can help you refactor your code and run commands and do a lot more too. So when I think of Copilot, it's just both of these things combined, but there's sort of two modes that we're going to pop between today in there.
Yeah. And just adding on to that, I think one of my big goals out of today, James, is that we kind of show all of the different ways, or as many as we can, that you can access and use Copilot, because it's really personal preference at a certain point, whether I'm in my workspace highlighting and using inline chat, or whether I kind of want a conversation. I think different Copilot methods and styles can be used for different problems and for different personal preferences.
Yeah, and the great part too is that while we're talking about code editors and IDEs, if you're on GitHub.com, GitHub Copilot is there, right? It's just there as well that you can ask questions, you can get insight. And then additionally, there's a lot of new features like code review features. So if you do a pull request, it can review that pull request, give you suggestions. I was just doing a live stream on Sunday where I did a pull request review with Copilot, and it fixed a bunch of asynchronous programming issues that I had by adding some basically semaphores to help me make my program not have threading issues, basically, which is really cool. And I wouldn't have thought about it, but it's like, hey, like, let me improve your code, and like you could do this, which is great. So you can think of it as like another person that can help you out, basically, and preemptively do some of those code reviews for you, which is great too. Cool. So Copilot chat, there's all sorts of stuff, and we're going to go through and we're going to use a lot of these today. And but just kind of be aware that while you're normally just like inside of, VS Code or Visual Studio, and you're just typing code and it's giving you recommendations, you can actually like ask it to do a bunch of stuff. So you can use these slash commands, and we're going to learn about those as well. Things like explain, you can have it fix a problem. You can say like, create tests for it, and it'll generate like NUnit or XUnit tests for you. And then you can you can help commands. There's always new commands being added as well. And if you are coming from other like environments like Python, you can even like spin up like Jupyter notebooks, for example, if you're doing some machine learning things like that too. So these are all built into the Copilot chat experience, which is nice.
Yeah, and we're getting some cool comments
Cool.
in the chat. I know Sean is mentioning that asking what does this piece of code do is one of his favorite things to do with Copilot, and that's exactly what slash explain is for. So it's cool to see that some of you already know the lay of the land with Copilot.
Yeah, and I think here, like this screen and what we'll explore today is that GitHub Copilot will also recommend suggestions for you. So like as you are going through and you are asking questions, it may propose another question that you may want to dive deeper into. And yeah, totally. I think it's a great point in the chat. And I appreciate that, Sean, is like, how often are we looking to jump into maybe an open source project and you don't even know where to start? Where does this feature live? You can ask it questions about the code base, and it'll go ahead and like help you out to navigate the code, which is really great to see. Cool. Well, I think when you think of limitations, I mean, it is AI, right? So, just like anything, there might be mistakes, there might be surprises, might be good, might be bad inside of it. And the best thing that you can do is share feedback, inside the tool. If you are finding some weirdness at all, a lot of people ask like, what can't you do with it? It's like, well, it can try to do as much as it possibly can, but just like any AI, it's AI, right? So it makes mistakes. It's a co-pilot, right? I think it's there by your side to help you be more productive and generate some of that code for you, but always verify, right? Always verify and consent. And a lot of times what you'll see with Copilot is if you're asking it questions like, hey, here's my recommendation, like review it and let me know if you want to insert that in the code, and then it will do it for you. So it's like verify with consent.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's one of my favorite things about Copilot chat is that it always gives you the breakdown of what it's suggesting it wants to do for you, exactly, where it wants to make changes, but it's up to you to accept them and review them and make sure that they're actually what you're looking for. And if they're not, then you just continue that conversation, and we'll get into some tips and tricks in the prompt engineering section for how to do that most effectively. But one of my favorite parts of this slide is that this quote is by Copilot. So it's very self-aware.
Yeah, it is. And that's why every Copilot needs a captain. So you think about that, it's like, yeah, you're the captain, you're in charge, right? So that's just something to kind of think about as you're guiding it through its path. It's your co-pilot and your assistant by your side. So what about Copilot, right? I mean, in general, I'll give you mine. This is like a nice marketing slide, but like for me, everything that Katie and people have been pointing out for is like, yeah, as far as productivity goes, adding new features, refactoring code, just getting started on a new project, but also just jumping into big things. Like I'm not really a web developer at all. I'm more of a mobile and client developer. So when I'm working with John or Jeff or in big web projects, it really helps me ask questions about where do I go? What is the code doing? Helps me understand it a lot better. So for me, it helps me stay in my code flow when I'm doing stuff. It helps me accelerate and add new features faster. And then it also makes my code better too. And kind of a lot of times I'm coding by myself, like on the weekends, right? So it's nice to have a little code review going on too. So it's pretty rad.
And it also kind of helps out with some of the boring stuff sometimes, like when it comes to generating tests, for example. It's always nice to have somebody there in the room or something there in the room to just help you out. So I could give it an example of what types of tests I'm trying to create and have Copilot help fill in the rest.
Yeah. So what if you wanted to get started with Copilot? Like, what do you need to actually have? Well, the first thing is that you're going to need a GitHub account, right? So you need to actually have a GitHub account. So you'll need one today because we'll be doing everything in code spaces. And you need a Copilot license, and that includes the free tier. So like basically when you boot up VS or VS Code or Codespace, it'll have you sign in and activate your free GitHub Copilot account. And the free account is pretty fully featured. And there's a huge grid on the Copilot website. But basically the main difference is the number of completions and chats that you get every month, and those refresh every single month as you're using it as well. And you can always upgrade to the pro version if you want. There's a free trial too, so if for some reason you're just going intense on it, you can go and upgrade as well. So a lot of people have been using both of them as well. So I have a personal account. I'm going to be using the free edition here. I just created a new GitHub account to show off. And then obviously on my work account, I have the pro version as well. And then you need a supported code editor or IDE. And we've mentioned VS Code, Visual Studio, code spaces as well. But GitHub Copilot does work in many other places. So if you're using like IntelliJ-based IDEs like Writer, for example, or you're using Xcode, for example, also works there. NeoVim, it also works obviously in a lot of other places, like in the terminal as well, Windows terminal, which is really cool too. So that is basically, if you're looking to get started, you'll need today, you only need the first two. You'll need a GitHub account and a Copilot license, because we're going to use GitHub code spaces to do the demos. Of course, if you want to like clone the repo and do stuff locally, that's also fine too. But we're going to do a lot of stuff in code spaces because it makes it easier so we can all follow along in one sort of space. But let's say you did get stuff installed, like basically everything's an extension. When you install VS Code and you install Visual Studio, a lot of the extensions are often installed for you automatically or one click away. And you'll see that there's different Copilot chats in different areas as well. So those will be installed, and they'll be installed for us automatically as well, which is great. Mm-hmm. And as we're coding, basically back and forth, once enabled, you give it context. It'll give you suggestions back and forth, no matter where you're at, which is pretty cool. And that's what we're going to start with. We're going to just start with this base level, just a brief introduction, get our code space, get set up. We're going to create a new project, and we're going to do a little bit of coding. There's a bunch of links in this URL, which we're dropping into it. And when you go to that aka.ms, I think it's the very first link. Let me just double check here. Let's learn .NET GitHub Copilot. The main link that we're going to want to go to is this GitHub page. So I'm going to go ahead and drop it in here, because it's a little bit long, but is this specific GitHub is going to be our starting point for it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to quit Teams so nothing pops up on my machine. And then I'm going to pop over to my browser. Perfect. There it is. Cool. Let me do one thing, because I just blinded everybody, I think. So let me do one thing.
It was a little jarring.
Boom.
We are getting some good questions in the chat. That actually John, shout out John Galloway, is answering, especially about what Copilot can and cannot see and how you can configure that. So John did put some good resource links in the YouTube chat. John, I'm going to ask you a favor. Can you also put those in the Twitch chat if you haven't already? Those are some really cool, valuable resources.
Cool. Yes. And there's a bunch of different modes as well. So there are a lot of different options that you're going to have based on the different tiers that you want. But it's all really described out as far as what's going on there. And then, yeah, there's different models as well. So sometimes inside of your GitHub account. So here I've logged into my GitHub account here. This is just my test account. When I go into settings here, there is a Copilot option here. So you can see I'm using GitHub Copilot. So it's github.com/settings/Copilot. This is the free one. And then down here, there's a lot of different capabilities that you can enable and disable. So for example, here's the Sonnet 3.5 support. I know 3.7 is coming. It's enabling up and down there. And then, different things like, can it search the web? Can it do stuff? So you have quite a bit of control here too about what it's allowed to do as far as just like the free tiers. And then if you have business accounts and other plans, you have more control over different things. So let me start here. So first thing, make sure you like this repo. Let's bump those stars up. That is for sure. And go from there. So what I wanted to point out here is that there are specifically a few different modules in this repo. And this is what we're going to use today. And we're actually going to skip the first few just because we kind of don't need to go into like the basics of GitHub or GitHub code spaces. But if you are brand new to GitHub for the very first time and intro to GitHub code spaces, definitely check those out. They're very helpful. It shows you not only use it in code spaces, but in VS Code. We're going to end up going through modules 3, 4, and 5. So an introduction, we're talking about some advanced features of GitHub Copilot with C#, and then we're going to try to build a mini game inside of here. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. And I also want to point out that below this, you'll also find tons of courses, beginner series guides as well. So if you're really just starting out in your learning journey, it's here. And there's tons of great beginner generative AI series and a lot more. So we try to put as many links to things as possible in here. That's there. So definitely give that a look. So what we're going to do is we're going to start on this module 3 here, which is Introduction to GitHub Copilot. And I'm going to go ahead and minimize this down. So we're going to click on that. And inside of here, it's basically going to go over everything that we did. So this is nice. So if you have friends or coworkers that are interested in getting started, you can just give them this repo. They can obviously watch the recording later. It'll be on our YouTube, where you should definitely hit that like button and smash subscribe. But it's going to give you an overview on it, and then some introductions for like videos that you can watch as well.
That's actually a really cool video, by the way. We don't have time to watch it here, but I recommend a couple of these different videos throughout the course. As I was going through, I was like, whoa, this is just a cool video.
Nice. So this one, it actually has 4 sub lessons. So one about like leveraging code spaces with Copilot, how we can like see some AI code suggestions, how we can do multiple suggestions, and also how we can add comments to our code. So you can follow along on these. I'm gonna have it open on another page. I'm just gonna go through this as well too. So the first place we're gonna start is this lesson link number 1. And our whole thing is that we're gonna develop and try to do some coding here. So I just updated this morning, Katie. So this should all go perfect.
Nice.
Perfect. Okay. So we're going to be using a code space here. And what I want to do is basically just right click and then say open in new tab. And that's important because else it'll just open the same tab and you really want to open it in a new tab in general. But you're going to get to this page here. What this is going to do is basically create a new code space, which is code space. If people don't know what it is, it's an online environment for you. So it'll have access to .NET. It's basically like you're remoting into a machine in the cloud, and you'll have capabilities of VS Code up inside the code space. And they use these dev containers, which allow you to basically containerize up a development environment and configure it. So here we have 2 different configurations, and one we'll use later for the mini game, though we don't really need to. We can just like use this one. But there's an introduction to Copilot, and this is just going to use the base, just like 2 cores. We don't need anything fancy. And we're going to hit create code space.
Yeah, and just to emphasize that configuration. So the nice thing about this is once we plop you in here, it's going to look exactly like you're in VS Code, but you're in your browser. And we've already gotten all of these extensions that you need. So the C# dev kit, the different Copilot extensions that we mentioned before, they're all already in here. So once this fully loads up, you can really just jump into the exercises.
Totally. Yeah, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger as we go through it. Should I even try to hit? How do I make it full screen? Whoa. Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah, crazy. Okay, so what's happening here is it's actually building my code space. So this is going to take like a few seconds. It depends on what code space is doing. But basically what it's doing, it's building our environment up. And code spaces will go to sleep automatically too if you're not using them. So it's not like you have that stuff. And with your GitHub account, you do get free code space minutes as well. I forget what the actual number is, but it'll spin up automatically. So what this is doing is it's building a code space. And in this instance, I've asked it to install .NET, have the .NET 9, and have the extensions for us as well. So this usually is pretty quick here. So let's see what it's doing.
Yeah, I'm a huge code spaces user, and I've never hit the maximum minutes. So it's quite a good amount. And also just like small shout out is you can already see the Copilot little icon at the top there. And that's just another, indication that, hey, you're set up to use Copilot.
Yeah. And the cool part is that you'll see is that there's basically all the code that's inside of here. And what it did, so the cool part here is even though it looks like I'm inside of VS Code on my local machine, I'm in the browser, which means that I'm not using any of my machine's resources at all, right? So I'm not actually like using my CPU or GPU besides just whatever the browser is using, and I'm not even using my network. So for example, like when I'm browsing these files or downloading this container image, that's all being done in the cloud, right? So if you have lower bandwidth and things like that, or you can't download a lot of big installs, everything's just done in the cloud for you, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Quick response in the chat. So Finn's asking about certifications or learning paths for Copilot on MS Learn. So we do have, I believe there is actually a mini certification related to GitHub Copilot. It's not .NET specific or anything like that. So you can check that out. But I also recommend the content that we're showing right now, just because it's a little bit more interactive, but hey, why not both? If you're trying to learn GitHub Copilot, get as much input and info as you can.
Totally. Yeah. And what's cool about this is a bunch of things are sort of happening on my code space right now. So the first thing is you may already here, when you did this, when you click here, you have a different name than mine, but basically there's a code space. You can see that it's installing extensions. So there's some default ones that it installs. But there's also, I've installed the C# dev kit, which is for VS Code, the official C# extension there, which is great. That's going to help us as we code and get IntelliSense and debug and a lot more. And then the GitHub Copilot and Copilot chat here. Now on the right-hand side, because I'm already in GitHub with my GitHub account inside of a code space, it's already logged me in to GitHub Copilot. So it's automatically there. Now you might see a sign up for free button. So you'll need to click that button to activate your Copilot account. So you'll need to do that for free and then boom, you're good to go, right? So definitely check that out. But this here is the Copilot chat and then the Copilot edits mode that we're seeing here. And what we're seeing on the bottom, let me go ahead and move us to the, over here, I guess. Here is different model selection. So I have access to 3.5 Sonnet and Flash and GPT-4o and O3 mini previews. And then you can enable more models there too. So there's a bunch of things that are sort of happening there, which is cool. And I'll move us to a different area when we'll use chat later, but I'm going to get rid of chat for now. And you can always bring it back up on that little Copilot button right there. And then you can say open chat right there, which is great. If you're a command person, that's Control-Alt-I and Control-Shift-I, though I'm a mouse clicker type of person. That's just my jam. I love it. So first I want to talk about how is this actually configured? Like why did this code space open with everything that I could possibly need inside of here? In fact, if I go into a terminal here and I say .NET version here, we can actually see I can make my fonts a little bit better. So let me go here and go settings and say font size. There we go. So let's make this like 18. And then.
And if you ever can't find the settings or something about your code space environment isn't working for you, use the command palette. So that's Control-Shift-P for Windows. For Mac, I think it's Command-Shift-P. And from there, you can really just ask basically what you're looking for and find it.
Yeah. So here, for example, here's .NET version. This has .NET 9 installed. So I have that there. So if I go over and I look at the dev container over here on the left-hand side, we'll actually see that there's a dev container.json. So this is only needed if you're using dev containers or if you're using code spaces. It's a good practice as well, because out of the box, it will just use a generic image that it has, which does have a bunch of coding on it. But here, for example, this is going to show me that I'm using the .NET 9 dev container. So if you want a .NET 8 or .NET 7 version, that's there. And then what I've done is I've added these customizations. So I've said, hey, I would like you to install these extensions. So if you have a bunch of favorite extensions, this is a good way of doing this here. So there's GitHub Copilot, and then this is the C# dev kit here too. Now, what's great is on the bottom left, way down here, you can click on that button, and that gives you a bunch of like code space commands. So here you can like rebuild the containers. If you wanted to change your container settings, you can stop the code space. Here you can actually open it in VS Code, for example. You could, work in a new clone inside of it. It gives you a bunch of things that you can do with it. Obviously we don't need to adjust it here, but this gives you sort of everything that you need, which is really cool at the end of the day, to customize it. And what's nice is if you didn't want to use a code space, this dev container also works inside of VS Code. And what's nice is that when you pull this down on your local machine, it'll create and run everything inside of Docker, for example, and create a little dev container. Literally, it's in the name, right? So you don't have to do anything to install anything on your machine besides VS Code. It'll install all the prerequisites into that container, which is really cool. And VS Code just knows about it by having that dev container folder and that dev container.json.
Yeah, perfect. I was going to say somebody just asked that question and answered. So yeah, you really just need that .dev container folder to set this up. And to the other question about where you can use code spaces, somebody's asking, is it available on tablet? Technically, yes. I have been able to use a code space on my phone before, which it's awesome. It is quite small on a phone, but you can totally do it.
Yeah. In fact, I have a mini foldable keyboard, so you can do that. So if you have like an iPad, but also you could AirPlay, like you could AirPlay it to your TV or something like that. And you could actually get a whole setup as well, which is really nice. But yeah, any browser technically. Cool. All right. So there's that. So we actually have multiple dev containers in here, so you can configure different folders and boot them up, but we're going to use this default one. And I'm also going to point out down here, and this is what we're going to do is there's this solution explorer that should have opened for you. And this actually is the C# dev kit. So I'm going to drag and drop that to the top. And the C# dev kit here, let me go ahead and make this a tiny bit bigger. I'm just going to make it real big. Perfect. Big everything. The solution explorer here is more familiar if you're using like Visual Studio, which gives us a nice project structure here, dependencies and programs. So we're going to use this one later when we want to do the mini game. But the first thing that we're going to do actually is go over to exercise 2. So if you're in that main step, you're going to, go and go to step 2 basically here, or just follow along with what I'm doing. But what you're able to do is we're going to go in here. There's a few ways that we can add a new project. So I like to do it from the solution explorer. There's this little like new button project here. So we already have a solution. With the .NET C# dev kit, you can just say .NET, and then there's a bunch of different .NET commands. So I could add a new project here and as well. But I'm just going to say, let me hit add. And this is going to show me all of my projects that are available. So we're going to create a brand new console application. So that's what we're going to select. And I'm going to call it skills, just because that's what I originally called it in the in the thing. So we're going to learn some GitHub Copilot skills. Super skills. And then I'm going to hit enter there. And this is going to put it in a default directory. So because I've selected that solution, it's going to show me it's going to be created in /code/skills for me here automatically. So I'm going to say that's fine. So let's go ahead and create that project. And now we're going to get the skills down here. So we're going to get this skills program here that's booted up. And it just says hello world. So it's a brand new console application. So we can type stuff and see it at the bottom here. And I'm going to put us, where am I going to put us? I'm going to put us
right in the middle.
I'm going to put us way over here. No one really needs to see us. I'm going to put us way down the bottom left, because I don't think we'll interact on the bottom left very much. But in case people really want to see our face, how's that sound, Katie?
That sounds great. Yeah. Zoom in.
Cool. So this is what we have. We have hello world. Now, you can also see that built into your source control. So I can actually see that we have source control here. That's all built in. And when you create the code space, it actually created a fork. So it actually created a fork of the repo under your name. And we can see here, I'm just on the main. So I can see I'm making modifications. I'm adding these files, and this is just a brand new console application. So if we open the skills, hello world, and we can actually hit this little run button. That's just how I prefer to run stuff. You can run, you could CD into it and hit .NET run and run it from the terminal if you want. But I'm just gonna hit that run button, and I'm gonna get some output here in our terminal. And all I want to hopefully see is hello world right there. So that's the jam, okay? So we've run our application, but we don't want that. Let's just start to learn a little bit about GitHub Copilot, okay? So what I'm gonna do is delete that, and I'm gonna start typing some code. So let's say we wanted to create a method that calculated some numbers. So I'm gonna say void here, and I'm gonna say calculate, and here, so if I stop typing, this is the ghost text. The code suggestion, we call it ghost text because it's
cool.
It's cool, I guess.
Name.
It's hovering around you, just like up there. It's like, hey, what's going on? So this here, let me go ahead and drop this down. It's if I just said calculate, it's like, oh, that's what I think you want to do. So it's going to say, this is kind of cool. It actually is like almost written a mini program for me, Katie. It's like, enter the first name. It's going to convert that to an int32. It's going to read line on here, right? So it's going to actually like, switch through the operations that you want.
And this is
which
totally kooky because the only context you've given it is void calculate. So it's just going off and trying to help, but it doesn't know what you want yet.
Yeah. And actually, this is pretty close to what I want, but I'm going to say, well, what if we passed in numbers, right? So if I said calculate numbers here, again, if I stop, it's actually giving me a different like recommendation. It's like, hey, I think you really want to add 10 plus 20. I think that's what you really want to do, right? Which could be what I want. How did you know, Copilot? Who knows? But I'm going to say, no. I want to actually pass in like int var 1, for example. And I would also like to pass in int var 2 here. So I'm going to pass it here. Okay, so this is pretty okay. So it's like, hey, we're just going to calculate these numbers and we're going to do stuff for you. So again, if I come in and anytime I sort of stop, even if I do a new line, it's going to allow me to do that there. So I'm just going to hit tab. Now, what I want to say is you may be getting something completely different. Like if Katie, if you did this right now, I can almost guarantee it would be completely different from whatever I just got.
Yeah,
in fact,
definitely. Yeah.
If you look at the screenshot, what I was expecting is for it to do a bunch of other stuff, right? Which is to actually calculate addition and subtraction and a lot more. So actually, if I go into here and I actually tab a little bit, I could say int, and then it's going to try to do something else. So result 2, for example. So it's going to say, okay, we're going to subtract the numbers. And I'm going to hit tab. And now it's going to recommend, what would you like to do next? So maybe you want to do that. And then it's going to say, oh, what if you multiply? Okay, the result is this. Oh, what if you want to divide it? And then, so now it's fanning this out, right? So that's kind of cool. But we could give it some additional different context, for example. So what if I said like, calculate all numbers, and I said int var 1, int var 2, int var 3. Let's see what it does, if it does anything different for us here. And again, sometimes the ghost text is just going to say, okay, this is what I think you really want, right? Which could be correct, could not be correct. It's based on what I wanted to do. But we could, for example, here, it's just going to calculate numbers, but I could say, for example, add numbers, right? And now it's going to actually add those numbers. I could say...
And quickly also, James, something that I'm seeing as you're kind of hovering over the ghost text is it gives you this, I guess, a little key to remind you that you can accept the whole thing by clicking tab, but sometimes it also has multiple alternative suggestions. So if you go over that gray ghost text and kind of like, it'll give you, this time it only has one suggestion, but where it says 1/1, sometimes it'll have, 2, 3, multiple that you can kind of look through and say, oh, do either of these match what I'm looking for more closely?
So if I said var1, var2, if I hover over that, I have 3 suggestions. Oh, that's cool. Right. And I can tab or I can control right arrow.
Which is really nice because sometimes I notice Copilot gets a little eager and it'll give me this whole suggestion. I'm like, wait, that first line looks great, but everything else is a little bit not what I'm looking for. So I can just accept it piecewise.
Nice. So here it's giving me a bunch of different suggestions, which is cool. So I'm going to accept that one. And then I'm going to go ahead and just call it here. So I'm going to say calculate numbers. And it's actually recommended that I do 5 and 10. Let's see what that does here. So I'm going to go ahead and run the application. That's cool. And let's see what we get in the terminal. I'm going to assume 98. No, just kidding. 15, Katie.
Perfect.
Yeah. So let's say I wanted to do this, right? I could, for example, come in, and I think it was where ghost text comes into it. So I say var num1, and here it's going to say 5, but I actually want to do a console dot read line, right? So here it's going to say read line and then num2. And then here it's actually recommending like, oh, you should calculate numbers because you finish it, right? So it could actually start to figure out what I want to do. And I might want to give it some context. I might want to say console dot, oh, there you go. So it's like, hey, I'm going to recommend what I think you want to do here. So I'm going to hit, let me say like console number 1. Look at this, right? And then here, console number 2. So I think that ghost text is really powerful because now we've given it a lot more context. We started with nothing, right? Like you said, Katie, it's like calculate. It's like calc. Like, I don't know what you want me to do, but it's like, hey, okay, you probably want to do this. And I could give it some more suggestions as well. But now the ghost text is really helping me like figure out what I want to do. So let's go ahead and run this now. And in the terminal. And here it's going to say, okay, number 1. So I'm going to say 10 and then 20. And then we should get result is 30, just like that, right? Which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And if you're doing something a little bit more complicated, another way that I like to get the ghost text working is to give it a comment, maybe a more specific comment about what I'm looking for. And sometimes that helps kind of give Copilot what it needs to give me a more specific result.
Yeah, we'll get to that as well as we go through the next one. Yeah. But here's something I want to point out really quick too is in the module, you'll see it's like, oh, do this like, commit command, do this thing. You can actually go over to the source control tab. And I want to point out these little like star little shimmer things here. So this is generate commit message with Copilot. And when you do this, it's going to look at my code changes and it's going to say that I've added skills with a basic functionality here. So it's going to say, okay, I know what you did. I've done these things automatically inside of your code project, and you could commit it and then it'll go and do this. So this is nice. And you can customize how big or how little you want it to be. So I might say like to calculate numbers, right?
And this is just another example, I feel like, of Copilot taking care of kind of the boring stuff, like writing commit messages. It's not a huge task per se, but it's nice to just be like, oh, okay, what?
Yeah.
Copilot, tell me.
So if I commit that into, I'm just going to do it on my main branch. I could, publish that branch and do some stuff here, and I could like add different commit messages. But let's say I went in and now I did another one, which is like, void subtract numbers, right? So I have the subtract number now. So now if I do this little thing here, it's like, oh, look at that. You added it, right? Again, like you said, the bigger and more crazy changes is really going to outline different things. But to me, Katie, every second is very important to me. And time is valuable. My keystrokes are precious. I only have so many of them in my life. There's only so many keystrokes that I'll have left. So I'll let Copilot help me out there.
We need to add like a philosophy hour to Let's Learn.
There's a video, I'm sure John can find it, that I shared of Scott Hanselman talking about keystrokes and how important they are to kind of remember that too, general. So anyways, okay, here we go. So Now let's say a few other things here. So let's say, for example, we want to add a new class to this, right? So I'm going to jump to part 3 here of this. I'm going to drop this link into the chat. This is exactly where I'm at. So if you're following along at home, this is where I'm at right now. We're going to add a new file. So here I'm going to go to the skills, and I'm going to hit this little new file button, and I'm going to say class, and I'm going to call it members here. And that's going to add this inside of here, which is nice. Okay. So this is just sort of like our normal C# scaffolding happening here. And the thing what I want to do is come inside of here, and I want to say, well, if I didn't type anything, it thinks it knows what I want to do, which is cool. I'm going to say public, and then I'm going to say str. And what I want to point out here is that the ghost text is recommending name, for example. But if I actually hover over this ghost text, like Katie was saying, is I can accept this suggestion, but there's also this little ... or control enter to open the completions panel. And this is like a super hidden feature, Katie. I didn't actually know this until I did it, this workshop, but it's really cool. Let me go ahead and minimize this down a little bit just so you can see it. So here, remember how you said you get like 1 or 2 completions up in there?
Mm-hmm.
Like this is giving me 9 different suggestions.
Whoa.
So this is saying like, oh, would you like, public name, age, and this will actually do a display here. I can accept that suggestion. Here's a name, role, age, show member. Here's one that gives me all the information, right? So it's trying to think of what I want to do based on this members class here, right? So it's giving me a lot of different code suggestions inside of here. So this gives me a lot more capability to go in and say, oh, wow, like just like what kind of member is this, right? So it has all these different code suggestions. Some are big, some are small that are inside of here, right? Apparently this one's very simple, just Alice, Bob, and Charlie in there as well to create those. So we get all these different, and John, Jane, and Jack, the 3 J's there. So I want to point that out because it's actually a nice little hidden feature when you're working on stuff to actually give you more time to review them in practice. And I might want, let's just do like this one. So if I hit accept suggestion, it's going to boom, put it right in there, right?
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
Super cool. And you can imagine, I mean, at that point, you've given it pretty, like not a lot of context. I would presume that, the more context you have there, the more specific those suggestions are, and tailored to exactly what you're looking for.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so if I had already given it a name, it wouldn't, it would suggest some other things there too that I might do. So I might want to put in here like a, public, string. It's going to give me, it already has a role, but if I said like, L, for example, let's see if it gives me last name, for example. So that's kind of nice if I wanted to do that, which is cool. Now there are some new features of GitHub Copilot, like next edit suggestions, and some new models that we haven't turned on inside of this code space. So we're just going to kind of give you what's out of the box and stable today, but Copilot's evolving pretty quick as well. So there's a new feature called next edit suggestions, where when I added that last name, it would have actually recommended additional code changes for me there too. But I'm going to back that out for now, just so we don't have to go through and add a bunch of code in there for it. So, but I wanted to point out that, and that's sort of the step 3, which is like we're learning the different parts of where GitHub Copilot can kind of fit in.
Love it. Yeah. And before we go on, there was a really interesting question in the Twitch chat that I want your take on, James. I'm not totally sure about this, but they're asking, sometimes I feel like Copilots get, my code may not be as good as I want it to be, and it's suggesting worse code as a result of that. Is there a way to mitigate that by, as a learner, like how can I not have my learning code influence the result?
Yeah, there's a few things that you can do. So the first thing is actually like if you're inside of GitHub Copilot, this little Copilot button is like really important. You can actually come down here for your code completions. And if you tap on that, you can actually, you can do a lot of different customizations as far as like the Copilot stuff that you're using inside of here. for different things, but you can also do change completions model. So the team just recently released a brand new GPT-4o Copilot. It's a custom one. So this is the 3.5 turbo based model. So if you're looking for maybe newer, different suggestions, give that preview a try as well. You can just toggle that on and it'll automatically start using that inside of it, which is nice. The other thing too is that you can give it different context, basically. Maybe John might be able to find the article for it, but you can actually add like almost like a Copilot configuration file and give it information about your project. So you can say, hey, this is a C# 13 .NET Blazor application. I want to use these things with these best practices, XYZ. And it will go ahead and like use those in its prompting and knowledge base. So you can let it know a little bit about what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And also at any time, like, there's also like feedback and things like that you can do. So make sure you give like the team feedback if you are getting something weird, right? So let me go ahead and like commit this. I'm just going to go ahead and, there we go. Just did it. Commit that code as well. I'm always all about the committing along the way, right? So we're good to go. Okay, cool. So let's go on to the fourth and last part of this one before we jump into the deck. Just kind of get like a good view of what else we can do here. What we're going to do now is come into our skills again. I'm going to add another class here, and I'm going to call it comments. Okay. And now what we're able to do is actually use that capability that you talked about earlier, which is commenting as code, right? So if I don't do anything here, it's going to try to like give me some comments, right? But like Katie said, you can add a comment here, and I'm going to say create a method that generates a comment for a given skill. And see what it does. I'm going to hit new line. And here it's very simply, not guessing what I want it to do, but I am having it create a method that takes in the skill. In this case, there's no skill class, right? So it's just going to say, oh, this is a string. And I can go ahead and accept that if I wanted to. Now, the other thing is that I could tab through multiple suggestions here. So this is like a static one. I can go in to that code completion window here, and this would give me a whole bunch of different suggestions that I might want. So here it's going to say, oh, generate a comment for a skill and a skill level and different suggestions that it might have, like I'm proficient at, I'm this, I'm that, right? So it's going to try to give me some information based on that as well. So if I like accept this one here, that'll go ahead and insert it into the class. So instead of it guessing, or instead of you typing public string generate comment, you could just give it a little bit more information ahead of time of what you want it to do, which is pretty cool. Now, so if we take that concept and we go back to the program here, I could say create create methods to multiply and divide two numbers, and then hit enter. So here, this is going to be the multiply one. So it figures that out. And then it gives me the divide one as well. It actually checks for divide by 0. So that's perfect as well. So you can give it that context, right? Based on how you want to work. And that's really good when you want it to do multiple things or bigger pieces of context as well, right? So that comment there. Now, the rub of that is that the comment is now in your code. So, which is good and bad, technically. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just there now.
Yeah, I'm a fan of comments in code. Let me know what's going on.
Yeah. So, so here, for example, I could then, come in and I bet that it's going to, enter two numbers to subtract. And again, that goes text as I'm typing. So based on the type of application that you're building, this is going to be pretty helpful to actually fan out and continue to use. So that's like a brief overview of like just the code editing parts, right? Not actually like the other things. And let me see actually if this thing is available, because I do think it's probably worth showing off. So if I open the settings of VS Code, I went to the bottom left, the settings down here. I go to extensions, and then you go to GitHub Copilot. let me see if it's available here. If I scroll down, I'm not sure if it's in stable or not. I'm just going to double check. Preview. Okay. I don't think it's, oh, is it? Oh, here it is. Perfect. Okay. So if you go into settings, I guess you could just type in NES and that would work as well. Maybe I was typing next.
So we're getting the new stuff.
This is the
right
new
now.
stuff. Yeah.
That's pretty
So
cool.
if you type in next edit here and under GitHub Copilot, there is this next edit suggestions or NES. It's a preview. I didn't know if it was going to be available because it just came out last week or 2 weeks ago. And this is that mode that's sort of like recommending things along the way. So I'm going to enable that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to this members here. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to say public, and let's say string of last name. I'm going to hit tab. Now here it's going to recommend first name. So that's good. Oh, it's going to keep doing it. Okay, let's see if it, there we go. Okay, perfect. So this is good. So I modified some code and I just sort of stopped. So I added last name and first name. And what it's recommending here is that it updates the constructor for the members here. And this is this little next edit suggestion that came up. So it looked ahead in my code and it said, hey, these are based on the changes you just made. Here are some recommended changes that you may have. So I'm going to go ahead and accept that. And then it should, let's see if it pops in at all to do any more in here. It may do that. So like in that instance, it sort of just kind of was like, okay, this is the next suggestion here. And then it can kind of continue on. So that's really nice. So if I was to go and I edit and delete this, for example, let's see what it will do. Brand new preview feature. So we'll see if it goes and next edits it for me or not. It may not. Oh, it did. Okay, perfect. So there we go. So now it's saying like, hey, the next edit suggestion is to be first name and last name. So it's actually looking ahead and trying to figure that out for me automatically, which is really cool. So that's something that as it's going through, it's going to pop right in basically and do. So that's a cool new feature that's available as well. And you'll kind of see that pop up as you're coding. And it's really, really nice.
That's wild. Do you know if this one's in VS yet? We're getting a couple questions about that.
Check out the Visual Studio blog. There are different features in both Visual Studio Stable and also Visual Studio Preview. And I'm not sure if next edit suggestions are. I know a lot of almost everything we've shown so far is posted the blog there. But you'll see, for example, like Claude 3.7, GitHub Copilot chat, the edits, the code referencing. And there's a lot of different features that are exclusive to VS Code, like some of the debugging features and watch Windows too. Check it out. I'm not sure if next edit suggestions is out there, or maybe it's in one of the previews or coming soon, but it did just come out first. And Visual Studio and VS Code are on different release cadences, right? So they release at different times, which means the extensions release at different times. So you often see the features first there, and then in Visual Studio later. And the same thing, some good questions about NeoVim, or if you're using like other editors, they will come as well. So definitely check the change log on GitHub and follow along where they're going for that. But good questions. Okay, let me head back over to the slides, Katie.
Nice.
Oh, any other questions that you think we should answer before we go on?
Those are the main ones I'm seeing. There was a lot of questions about feature parity between Visual Studio and VS Code. So like James said, check out the blog because they're constantly, writing about what's new and what's upcoming there.
Yeah.
I think those are the main ones that I'm seeing here. Let me look through real quick. Also some love for VS Code. So love to see that. VS Code Insiders, does VS Code Insiders get features at the same time as Code Spaces?
I don't think so. I think Insider is first. I don't think you can get a code space with Insiders, but that's a good thing to ask. Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't think so, though. I think they're also at a different release cadence.
Yeah.
But good question.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I think that might be it. Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's head back over to the slides. I'll make us all tiny
Woo.
again. All right, so let's continue on. Let's talk about prompt engineering, right? Actually talk about doing some more things and what actually prompt engineering is, like actually crafting effective commands. I think the thing that you will start to notice is that the more that you use GitHub Copilot, the better you get at it, to be honest, and the more proficient you get. Just like anything, to be honest, like just like coding, right? The more you do it, just happens to be the better you kind of get at it at the end of the day. The practice is there, which means you start to refine basically, like you start to refine what you ask it, how you ask it, like how you code a little bit to help it be more proficient in the things that it's doing, which is really cool. So what is prompt engineering, right? What is a prompt? Well, in the context of Copilot, that's the code or the question that you're asking it, right? It's the input. That's the prompt that you're giving it. And again, generated by Copilot that loves to tell us all the things that we're doing here. But effective prompting ensures that Copilot understands that context and can give you more accurate code suggestions. And so it's going back and forth. Like if you're studying for an exam, right? Like having that context in the question and going back and forth with someone, prompting back and forth is really helpful to give it. And even if you give it the context of like, I'm using this version of C# or this is a Blazor app, or I'm a front end developer, XYZ, it's going to give that knowledge that you're giving it.
Yeah, I think two things that I used to always hear when it came to prompt engineering, like two guiding lights are, like you're saying, James, be super specific or as specific as you can. And also be narrow with your requests. Copilot is super powerful. It can handle some pretty complicated requests, but it often does better and more close to what you're imagining the more or the smaller of a request you're giving it. Like instead of create my entire application given this one prompt, maybe just create a method, for example.
Yeah, and then be really specific about that method that you want it to create and the variables and the things. They can parse it. So the prompt is what you give it. The prompt engineering is designing that prompt and ensuring those high quality prompts, just like you're saying, Katie. So like figuring out what works best in your coding style. So it's important because, like you said, it maximizes the utility of Copilot. It helps minimize different iterations that you're working on. You get better code suggestions. And it's really a skill, I think, to like learn those things. And it can help like refine interactions and reduce misunderstandings in general. And like sometimes even when I'm talking to it, I gotta use the voice to talk too. Like I'll say like, this is a .NET MAUI application. I want this to be in XAML and I want to use these things, blah, 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 and give it that information to reduce it down. And these models are very good at figuring out what you're saying there in it. Cool. So different techniques here. So think about this. I think this is kind of cool. Is like 0 shot, 1 shot, few shots, prompting basically of what you can give a Copilot. And Katie and I were just learning about this, and because I think we do it already, but we didn't actually realize that there was like names for it. But think of like 0 shot programming is you just kind of give it minimal context, right? In this technique, I'm saying write me a unit test for all the operations in my calculator JS file. And in this instance, I'm not giving it any context, right? Like I'm just saying, do this thing. And it's going to try to generate some, unit test for me as much as it can in this JavaScript file as well. And that's sort of just like the 0 shot. And this is normally our first approach, I would say. Like, and this is often like as we're getting comfortable with it, like, am I getting the desired output out of it based on what I'm putting in? So maybe this is perfect for you, right? But that one shot and multi-shot, kind of you give it additional context, right? So if you're in the chat, for example, you could say not only just write me that unit test, but here's an example of one, right? So you could say, here's an example of how I want to write it. And then it will give you that information back, right? So that gives it much more context of how you want it to generate the actual tests, right? So for example, like you were saying earlier, Katie, it's like, oh yeah, I could say write some unit tests, but if I'm a C# developer, is that an X unit test, an N unit test? Like it may be able to figure that out by your code and what you have already. But if it's the first one, what do you want it to do, right? I think that's a good example of passing that information in.
And I can totally imagine these different methods for learners as well. let's say you're in a class and you're learning a new concept, maybe maybe a new data structure, maybe you're learning something like recursion and you're like, hey, Copilot, can you give me some examples of this? Or if your professor or whatever course you're taking gives you one example, maybe you generate other examples so that you really can wrap your mind around what you're learning.
Exactly. Yeah. So when I think of the cornerstones of prompting, it kind of starts with just like how exactly we're giving it information, right? And we're in control of the sort of like verbosity of like how much information we want to give. So this is sort of the cycle, right? We provide examples, we can give direction, we can format response, we evaluate the quality, and we can chain prompts together so we can give it more information of what we want. So like effective communication with Copilot is like pretty important at the end of the day. Like giving it direction, right? Like seed words, they might illustrate, for example, and give it clarity, like I'm saying, like N unit or X unit, like give it direction of what you want it to do. And then just the formatting, right? Like what type do I want it to be? Do I want it to be a list? Do I want it to be a function? Like, what do I want it to be? And then just like see what it's giving me and sort of starting to pull that together as we go. So as we're starting to prompt and we're starting to chat with it, you'll start to see these things come together as well. So I think that's kind of important to kind of like know how that stuff is working. Okay, let's go into the second lab. This one's actually going to use a different code space here. And we're going to learn about some different features, and we're going to try to add some different things to our application with Copilot and Copilot chat as well into the application. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to jump back out to here. And I'm going to go ahead and just minimize this back down. Boop. And where we want to go is, if you're back on this main repo, we're going to go into section 4 here. And that's what we're going to spend some of our time next on. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that into the chat for everybody so you can follow along here. Boop. There you go. And now this is where we're going to kind of be at. So there's a bunch of prerequisite stuff. So again, if you're just taking this for the first time and doing this stuff, we're actually going to open a different code space. So this code space might go to sleep just based on like what's happening in my code space. But I'm going to go, and this is a new code space. So I'm going to open that one in a new tab. And this is actually a .NET code space. It's from github.com/.NET code space. And the cool part about this code space is that it is pre-configured, in this case .NET 8. We're working on a .NET 9 upgrade for it, but it gives us a full weather API, a minimal API inside of a code space, a Blazor app, an API backend that we can just run. So this is sort of a default code space that you can kind of like take a look at. So I'm going to hit create a new code space, and then it's going to create another new code space for me. And again, I'm going to make this bigger here. Boop, 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 boop,
Perfect.
boop.
And we are getting some good questions that I think we'll answer a little bit in this next set of demo instructions. But some of the chatter is about how sometimes Copilot in the chat will, you ask it for a specific change to your code, and it kind of gives you way more than you're looking for. It regurgitates or repeats maybe the whole snippet. What I have found helpful, then James, I'll let you, talk about any strategies you've seen. But for me, using the chat inline, which is what we're about to do. So using Control-I, I'll highlight whatever change I want to make, that area, and then asking the question there. I've seen those responses being a little bit more tailored and not trying to rewrite the whole section of code. Have you seen similar things, James?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the context that it has. There are some, like I said, configuration files that you can like modify and like have it do different things as far as like the context that it gives you back in it. But it's always good feedback as well of like what you want it to recommend. So for me, often, like as I'm coding, I'll get pretty far into my method, and like sometimes I'll look at the ghost text and sometimes I won't. And the ghost text, they're always kind of like fiddling with like when it comes up too. So based on how you're coding, it may come up at different parts and times on it. But I think the important part is like looking through the different code suggestions that it gives you as well. So it's going to be different for everyone. And the more you use it, the more it's going to, you might end up changing your code a little bit here and there. It might just give you different things too. But the thing is, a lot of this stuff kind of changes often too, as they're sort of tweaking and fine tuning everything inside of VS or VS Code, for example. So I'm actually going to do something different. So like what I wanted to do first here, since like the chat window opened here for me automatically, let's just ask Copilot here, like what this application is. What is this application doing, and what features does it have? Question mark here. So I'm just going to ask it in the Copilot chat, and now it's going to look at my workspace, and it's going to say, okay, I'm going to use the information that I have here in your workspace, and I'm going to give you some information. So this is really cool. So imagine you just got this for the first time, right? It's like, hey, this is a .NET project. It has a front end, a back end. It fetches the weather forecasts, and here's the key features. There's the server-side application. There's the weather forecast details here in this, and it gives you a link to the code. That's cool. You can tap on it and it opens right up. It uses dependency injection and uses the routing on the front end. And here it's even going to show me it uses Swagger, and there's a forecast endpoint that's available too. And there's even a launch configuration and a dev container configuration, right? So it gives me the key files, and it can help me run it as well. So this is cool if you were just getting started. How do I even run this application, right? It's going to show me that. So it's like, hey, in the launch JSON, there's a way to run all, right? So if I go over to the debug window, make this a little bit smaller here, I can hit run all. And now, I don't need that one open. I need to have open a file. Let me open. Oh, that should. Just do something. Let me check here. Run. Should run both of them. Hold on, where did my file go? Launch.json. There it is. Run. Open a file. Launch.json. Okay, I don't know why it didn't have it.
Maybe the code space was still finishing stuff up.
Oh, it could be. You don't have an extension for that. What is it doing? Oh, it's funny because it is the file, and it did show up for a second. I'm going to refresh it. When in doubt, refresh it.
Seriously.
Refresh the code space, yeah.
Off and on again.
It's interesting. It should reopen the remote. And it does have my session on here too, so it kind of like freezes it as well. So I wanted to, there's a backend and a front end. So I wanted to run both of them at the same time, the run all command. I'm not sure why that didn't pop up inside of it here. So let's give it a second to boot this back up here in the code space.
Yeah, and there is a prompt. I don't know if it'd be in code spaces, but definitely when you're locally using VS Code in the command palette to just reload the window, which I have to use a lot. It's very nice.
Yeah, I think you can. There's like a reload code space as well. So it might have just been activating the extensions as well. So let's see. There's the code. All right. Oh, wait, it didn't have it. I'm not sure why necessarily.
Did the Solution Explorer pop up yet? Maybe it doesn't realize where it is.
It's a good question. If you look at the dev container, I actually don't know if this one has
a solution.
It does have this. Oh yeah, it has the C# dev kit. And maybe it is still installing in extensions. Let's see. Good call, Katie.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a couple extra moments. I think the extensions load last, and then usually it'll give you the little the little timer symbol on the extensions icon. Okay, there you go. So it is set up there.
It's set up there. I'm not sure why it didn't launch it.
Solution Explorer popped.
Fascinating.
Oh, there it is.
Oh,
Boom.
now I have, okay.
Solution Explorer popped up.
Solution Explorer popped up. Okay, cool.
So that's how, usually that's my like, or ready to go.
Yeah, I'm so surprised. Oh, okay. Now I just
There we go.
needed to wait long enough. Okay.
We're just too excited.
Yeah. Let me see. I might have upset it though. Okay, so let me go back here. Let me go ahead and build it. Now that I've completely upset it, I'm sure. Let's see what it's going to do here. I think I have, that is the name of it. Unless they change this, and then that needs to be updated. Let's say I might have like messed up when I opened it. I'm going to rename those for some reason. Okay, interesting. So for some reason, it's not building for you. I just renamed backend to backend, one word. In there, maybe I accidentally changed something that was there. But okay, it should be running it in multiple configurations. So we'll make sure that's fixed up. But if for some reason that messed up for you, just rename the back end and the front end to one word in these configurations and you'll be good to go. I will make sure that is fixed somewhere, somehow. It might be some new thing that they have. Cool. So here, if I actually go to my ports here, it's going to show me that it forwarded these ports. So I can actually like click on this little button here and it's going to forward the port for me. So since I'm, again, using a code space, it's going to try to open that up for me automatically. Now, that being said, that's the API. So when I go into the API, I need to actually add to the end of it /weather forecast here. And that's going to give me back my JSON that's here. So we get that JSON back, right? If I open up the front end here, just like this, it's going to go ahead and forward the ports here. And then it's going to return that data. So every time I hit this here, it's going to go ahead and refresh that data for me. So I can see my Blazor application and then my data here as well. So I get all that stuff, which is really cool as well. So we get that. Cool. All right. So now we're just kind of debugging and doing stuff. So for example, if I went into the backend project and I looked at the program CS file here, we can see that this has an API Explorer, has Swagger definition, and it has this get weather forecast here as well. So if I go and I refresh this, I'll get a breakpoint. So I'm just doing normal debugging, just like always. I can go ahead and investigate stuff just like as I would expect as well. So just sort of normal programming and coding things happening there inside of it. So you get all that that nice stuff in general there too. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop debugging these projects. And what I want to do first is learn about some / commands. So we learned about them a little bit in the beginning, but I want to go a little bit deeper here basically on them. So for example, if I wanted to go in and I wanted to understand a specific piece of code, I could try to ask it here, but I could also go in here and you can hit Control-I to bring up Copilot inline. Now, I also, because I click, you can right click and hit Edit Inline here. But I also want to show that if you right click on it, you can do a bunch of other things. Like it gives you explain, fix, review and comment, generate tests, text in here, add selection, add files. But if you hit Control-I, it'll bring up this little chat. So I'm going to actually minimize this chat here, and you can actually ask the chat in line. So I can say /explain. So when you hit /, you get these different / commands: doc, edit, explain, fix, generate. So I'm going to say explain, and I'm just going to hit enter. So just tell it to explain this piece of code that I've selected here. And now it's going to tell me exactly what it did. So this is going to tell me that this here is using, it's from ASP.NET Core. It's in this file. It's using this map get, which is going to create an HTTP GET request for weather forecast. And it's going to randomly generate weather forecast for me and give that back. So here's the parameters, here's all this stuff. Now, the cool part is that I can have more actions here. So I could configure a different chat. I could rerun that command. I could toggle between different models if I wanted to. And I can also say view in chat, and that's nice. So if I want to continue the conversation on the side, like me in my normal desk setup, I have like a ultra wide, so that's super duper nifty basically to do, you know what I mean? So that's kind of cool to put that in there. So you can kind of like carry on the conversation. So now it would have this context, and you can see here in the bottom right, it's saying use this program CS, these lines. And I could say, what I don't know what I could ask it. I could say, are there other open API documentation items I could add to this call? I don't know. And now it's going to look and it's going to try to like run some different things and like figure out like the search queries and command back and forth based on the context that I've given it basically inside here. So we'll see if it's going to go back in. I'm completely going off script basically, Katie, at this point.
It's all good. And Ryan's asking about custom instructions and if those also apply to the inline chat as well as just the chat window. I believe they do.
I think they do, but I'm not positive.
So maybe double, fact check us, but I'm going to say yes.
Yeah. Okay. So here, this is like going to give me a little bit more information about the request and other things I could add. So here, this one has with open API, but this is saying, oh, you could actually add like this entire schema and tags and other things like that. John would know more because he's a web developer. I'm not. So I'm just going to say, okay, cool. That's great. So I can just give it some more information as well if I wanted to go back and forth with it, which is nice. But let's use another / command, Katie. Let's generate some tests. So let's say we came down here to the title, right? And this is doing some math here. I could highlight this, Control I, and I'm going to say /tests here. I'm going to have it generate some new tests for me. Now, I'm not going to give it any information about what tests to generate and what to do. But what we're going to see is that GitHub Copilot, and I'm going to go and minimize this chat so you can kind of see it, has gone ahead and has actually created a brand new file for me called program test. And what this is doing is generating a new test in the backend project called program tests. And it's going to create an XUnit test for me. And what this is going to do is I'm going to make this a little bit smaller based on the context that it has. It's going to say, what can I test? So here it's going to calculate make sure that the temperature is calculated correctly, basically that when it's 0 degrees Celsius, it's 32 degrees Fahrenheit. This is also going to just make sure that things are properly initialized when I create it. And it's created that test for me automatically. So that's super duper nice there, which is really cool.
One thing to remember there too is you can accept that as it is, but it's still a conversation. So if you wanted to, if you said, actually, I don't really want to use XUnit, I want to use NUnit or something, you can ask Copilot to change that for you or any other question you may have or change you may want to make.
Let's do it. So let's go ahead and say edit code. So I said, yeah, use NUnit instead of execute it, NUnit. So here it's going to update the code based on what it did. And it probably might be very similar because the asserts are probably very similar as well. But it did change it. I say, how about MS test? That one should have different things as well. Let's see. There we go. So here, for example, that's really nice. It has gone ahead and updated the rest of it. So these ones do have different asserts and different methods here as well, right? So it's kind of like going through and it's doing this for me here. And you could say, could you also test negative degrees ? Right? And then hopefully this will go through and it should go, here's freezing, here's this, and then it's going to add another test for me here, which is negative degrees, and then another one as well. So now we have a bunch of different tests. So you can iterate on it, which I think is super important there too, which is good. Great point, Katie.
Definitely. Some folks in the chat are asking about the extension setup. So we did skip those units in the workshop just so we could really get into the meat of things. But if you go to the workshop link, we'll share that in the chat. There should be some, I think it's the first or the second unit are about how to get this all set up.
Yeah, and if you're just doing it on your local machine, all you really need to do is just install GitHub Copilot. That's all you need to do.
And Copilot chat. There's
It'll
two.
and it'll do it for you automatically. So those two are linked
Oh,
together.
perfect.
So yeah. When you get one, you get both. They do ship like different times updates, but you get both of them when you install it there. Yep, automatically. Okay, so one thing I want to point out is that this file is actually not actually saved. So if I go back over here, it's not actually in this backend project. It's sort of in this magical space right now. It's like, maybe you want to do some stuff. We'll see. So I'm not going to save this because then I would need to install some NuGet packages and a lot more. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and close it. And I'm not going to save it. We're just kind of experimenting. So I'm not going to save it into my source code, but I could have accepted it, for example, if I wanted to there. Let's do one more thing. Let's generate some docs for this. So let's say I wanted to come in here and right click here. I could say generate docs, generate tests. Those are just going to run the slash commands. I could, of course, open that up and say slash doc here. And then this is going to document the code for me. So here it's written the documentation in C# style. I could say, can you also document the members? And then let's see what it does. So boop. And see if it does it inside of it. Cover. So there you go. So I can accept that. And now I have like good commented code, right? And I can review it, make sure it's accurate, and go from there too. So now I have all those things, which is really nice as a nice little command, which is cool.
Yeah. And if you forget any of those slash commands, I know there's a bunch. You can go into Copilot chat and do slash help. Then it'll give you a whole list of everything you can do there.
Yeah, and there's actually more commands inside of the Copilot chat too, because it's a different context, right? So
yeah, you can even just hit slash, and then as you saw there, it shows you all of the ones you can use.
Yeah, and I should point out here what's really cool is that we have there's at VS Code, so you can say at VS Code at terminal, and we actually have the GitHub Copilot for Azure installed, so you can actually ask GitHub or Azure things. So if you say at, there's these sort of extensions that you can give it these commands. So you can ask the workspace, you can ask VS Code, you can ask terminal, you can ask specific things instead of just generic parts as well, which is cool. But let's go ahead and say we wanted to add some more stuff to this. So let's do something here where maybe we want to add create another record here that maybe has by city as well. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to say create a new internal record named weather forecast by city that requests the following. I'm just looking at the docs here. So following, following, and I'm going to make this smaller. Perfect. So you can follow along. I'm going to say city, date, temperature, C, and summary. Let's see what it gives us. Perfect. Almost. Yeah, date only. Okay, perfect. So it kind of gave us another one back. So we're going to pass in a city here. So I could have probably just copied and pasted this and then changed a few things, but that's cool. And then if I wanted to, of course, I could go in and say, generate docs, and then it's just going to run that slash command. That's all that does, which is kind of nice. And that should go ahead and grab that for us automatically. So now it's generating all the, where's it putting it? In the wrong place. I'm going to not accept it. Let me get out of there. Okay, it didn't do it. So I don't know. I was going to put it below, but it didn't have the context. Let me save it. Okay, let's do one more thing. So now that we have this in here, let's add another endpoint in here. So there's a few things that I could do. Like one, I could give it a command and I could say, create a new endpoint that returns this here, right? So it's going to kind of figure out what I want to do anyways. And now it's going to create the code for me. So this is going to create a new endpoint where I can pass it a city name, and it's going to set the city here when I create it. And then I'm just going to make sure it compiles with a semicolon, and then we're good to go automatically. Now, I think if I was to delete that here, I think it's going to be smart enough, right? See, it's already smart enough to know. So it really depends. Like someone was asking about the code completion. So if you're getting something like this and you're like, well, I don't know if I want that, right? I want something else. Start with a comment, right? And then, you could say, add delete command or whatever, that returns this. And then it's going to do some stuff, right, inside of it and finish that off. So based on what you want, it's going to try to figure out what you want to do next inside of it. So now we have our application. Now we have our things running. So let's go ahead and run it one more time. And this is cool because I think this shows like, your application inside, you have a real application. Like you've already built an application. Like, what am I going to do next here? Oh, that's not good. Oh, did it run? It ran something. Okay, let me open in browser. Okay, cool. That ran. There's the weather command, and it's refreshing randomly. Perfect. And then now if I say Cleveland, for example, now I hit the other endpoint, right? So here I get Cleveland everywhere. That's the name. It's going to return some weather back to me, for example, which is cool, which is nice. So we get that information back on there too. I think that's cool, but I'm going to do one more thing, Kate. I'm just going to go wild. How do you feel about that?
Ooh, I like it.
Okay. I'm going to open up Copilot Edit over here. And let's open up the front end file for pages, fetch data. Perfect. And I'm going to say, this is different. So before we're asking questions inside of it, but what I would really like for it to do is, define a working set of files that I want to work against. Now, in this case, it's like one file, but I could ask it and do multiple files as well. Like if I wanted to add different things in here. So let's just say, let's update the user interface to ask the user for the city. They want the weather for, and then call the new endpoint for it and update the table to display the city as well. All right, so let's see what it does. All right, cool. So now it's looking at this. So if I wanted to add so if it didn't exist, for example, if that endpoint didn't exist, I could say, oh, here's the endpoint, add the front end, add the back end for me automatically, and then apply those edits for me here. So, all right, cool. So here's what it did. Let's see. So it added a city. It added an on-click get weather forecast to get weather. It added the city inside of here. There's the city there. And let's see if it did it. So it passed in the city, forecasts there. Now, this is actually calling this forecast client, which I didn't realize. And this is the data here. So one thing is that it's going to need to update this as well to pass this information in. So I'm going to add that file into it, and we can see the fetch data is now calling it date time now. So I'm going to say, let's update. Let me add this file to the working set. There we go. And let's update the method to take in the date and the name of the city. See if that does it. So now I've just kind of added files that in the project to work through. Let's see what it does. So it's going to now go through and update this code for us. There we go. And this has created a new one for us. So we have the start date here. That calls the weather forecast there, passes in the city. And this one also passes in the start date inside of it.
Copilot Edits is super cool and super powerful. I just dropped a link in the chat. I don't know if it works as a link, but you can copy paste it to a video that our colleague Matt did on Copilot Edits, just so that you get even more info on this. And there's some cool preview features about how you can use images to prompt it as well. It's super, super cool.
Yeah. So here now it's gone and updated the backend and the front end. I'm going to add another file in here, which is the backend file. I'll say, let's make sure the endpoints are correct on the weather forecast client for the new call. Okay. So let's see what happens here. So now it's going to look at this. And what I notice is, remember, we called a different API endpoint. There it is. Perfect. So here, instead of it doing pasting it in normally, this is like a slash at the end. So like we're looking for /city and then the start date on top of it. So now it has all these files. I'm going to hit accept here. I'm going to stop debugging this as well. And let's end this session and let's see what happens now if I come back over and hit run all, assuming it compiles correctly.
And yes, somebody's asking, is it free? It is part of GitHub Copilot free. So you can access this today.
Yeah. So perfect. Okay, cool. So if I say San Diego, and then say get weather, boom. Now we get the weather for San Diego, which is great.
Nice.
So that was really cool because I edited, looked at 3 different files, added it to my working set, and modified it as well, right? So if I change this date here, I don't even know how to do this date control. If I say
Who's
March,
saying
for example.
that San Diego is freezing?
Yeah. So now, for example, we can see that it actually is not using this new date. So again, now you can start to go back and forth on it. So for example, like here, it's actually like just setting the same start date, right? For example, but I probably want to actually pass in the date that's here. So there's different things that are going back and forth with this. So based on how like Blazor and things, so you could modify these things and go back and forth and work on it and say, hey, this thing isn't updating this thing. Can you go modify the code and do some stuff as well? So, and that's available in Visual Studio, GitHub Copilot edit mode as well. Yep, it's right there.
Yep.
So totally good to go.
Quickly, I don't have access to drop that link for you, Oliver, to the video series. Can you drop it? Okay, it's on the Visual Studio YouTube channel. If you check out their recent videos, we highlight a bunch of these features, but for Visual Studio. So if that's more your jam, go check those out over there.
Yeah, there's a great series going on. Okay, let's hop back into slides really quick. Some tips and tricks, Katie. Tips and tricks.
Yeah.
There you go.
That was the most sad jingle.
So you can do a bunch of stuff. Like there's a bunch of customization settings. Like I definitely recommend like going down and checking these out. So you can enable and disable different non-programming meta files too. So if you want to work with like YAML files or Markdown files, GitHub Copilot is awesome for that too. Oops, there we go. Oh, I went too far. Perfect. So this is great. So if you're working with like SQL or Markdown files, you can enable and disable those inside of it based on what you're working with, which is really cool as well. So there's a lot of customization that you can do. We talked a little bit about unit test generation. This is obviously great for general unit test use cases, right? And you can work with it and give it more context back and forth. So it's really nice to be able to analyze and take a look at it. So as you're modifying things as well. And a good example too is as I'm adding in with Copilot edits, for example, I can go and I can say, hey, can you also add the unit test for it too? And it would know how to do that too. So you can start to use these different features in parallel. Another thing we didn't talk about, Katie, was refactoring code, but some things, especially in not just older applications, but newer applications is, there's new programming language features added all the time. You can ask it to refactor the code. Maybe something is having errors. Like in this instance here, this is saying, oh, there's a divide by 0 issue. Can you fix that for me, right? Highlight it, say refactor, and then, you can ask it to do these refactoring code samples of what you want it to do, which is really nice.
Yeah, I think that's even one of the slash commands, isn't it?
I think so. There's like a fix command. Yeah. So you can give it some context. And those slash commands are just giving it context of what to do. Because like you could say, oh, please generate these and blah, blah, blah. But it's going to provide that context too, which is cool. Yeah. And then, you can also run these things at a project level too. So, go in and you can also run these commands inside of the terminal. So it's kind of a nice idea. You can give it the whole workspace. You can give it a specific file to work from. You can give it additional context as well. So, you can have it bootstrap an entire application from scratch if you want it to, and it'll give you a bunch of files. You can ask it what packages you need to add, whether it's an NPM package or a NuGet package based on when you're working on different things. The slash commands, super powerful as well. So whether you're, creating new workspaces or you're creating notebooks or you're doing a bunch of things, you can really give it a lot of information. And then the other thing too is, also think about the tabs that you have open. So we call this neighboring tabs, and it's kind of a technique that GitHub Copilot will look at not just the active file that you have, but it can also look at neighbor tabs and the open files that you have there. So think about what files are open that you're working on together, and that's a good way of giving it additional context of the files that you have inside your project. So sometimes for me, I love to close all my tabs, but it's kind of nice to actually go in and try to do one at a time. Okay. Other thing I think is like going back and forth. So this is something I do with it as well. So you can think of it as sort of like bouncing back and forth, right? So if you take a look at the example on the slide where it's like, hey, I want you to act as a front-end web developer coach. I want you to provide some questions here. And, my first request is to help set up my development environment. And it's like, oh, sure, what else do you need me to do? So it's going to ask me questions, right? So if you tell it to ask questions and go back and forth, you can have this conversation to enhance the results back and forth, which is really cool.
And you could ask it like to be an interviewer if you're still learning. There's a whole bunch of things. Somebody that we work with asked it to be a pirate once. I don't know if I recommend that, but if you need some whimsy in your day, you can ask it to be a pirate. So there's a whole bunch of fun stuff you can do with this.
Yeah. So you might be saying, okay, well, we've seen a lot of examples of Copilot and Copilot Chat. Like, when would I use both of them? And the answer is you kind of like use them kind of, hopefully all of them all at the same time. But like, with Copilot and the suggestions, right, that's going to be the direct code writing. It's going to solo. I'm just developing there. When you get into the chat, whether it's like bringing up that chat window in line or on the right-hand side or wherever you dock it, that's really when you want that in-depth assistance, that learning and coaching, that collaborative scenarios, multi-file editing back and forth, and getting those bigger code suggestions, not exactly where I'm typing right now. So that's when you go back and forth between those. And I use them pretty much synonymously back and forth when I'm in a coding session, to be honest with you.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like Copilot is more, for me, it's a little more in the background. It kind of knows what I'm looking for, even when I'm not explicitly asking for help. So it really helps speed me up that way. But if there's something that has me blocked, that's where I really like Copilot Chat.
Yeah. And then of course, just forget like context is super important, right? So give it details, clarify the requirements, keep going back and forth with questions, ensure like Copilot knows what's happening. And that's how you're going to get the best result at the end of the day for tips and tricks there, right? So you think about it step by step. Like if you're like, oh, I'm going to build a calculator app, like break it, you can break it down. So if you think about the steps, you can kind of ensure clarity on it that's coming in. So if you just go in, you say, okay, let me start with like just a calculator project. You could say, okay, first, like, hey, can you like ask me, can I build the back end that takes in this, I'm building a calculator app. Like I want to build the front end with it. And it's going to be this framework and this thing. Okay, I'm going to do that. Oh, can we build the back end and do these things? You can kind of think about it step by step in the project. And you kind of saw me working through that just a second ago, which was me saying like, okay, like I want to add this command. Oh, I actually also need you to update this other thing. Oh, I also want you to do this. So in my mind, what am I coding and how would I code it and how would I organize that approach? And that's going to help me break down those tasks to help kind of drive clarity to the actual Copilot.
I've also done this thing, James, where sometimes I'll ask it to give me suggestions for an outline for how I should approach a new project. And that's really helpful too, because I don't always know where to start. So sometimes it's nice to just have that verbalized to me and I can say, oh, actually, I wouldn't start here. I'd start here, but I can customize it as I want.
Oh, very cool. I like that. Well, let's try to do that. We only got 13 minutes left before it's like noon here. So let's try to build a mini game here. And this is the last section of it. So there's actually a Microsoft Learn module associated with this specific one. So what's cool is if you want to follow along, you're actually able to go onto the challenge project and earn some sweet points over here as well. So I'm going to drop the link in for the training module, but you can also just follow along here too. So I'm going to jump back over here, Katie, here. And our idea is what we're going to do is we're going to build rock, paper, scissors. And we're going to need to create some game logic inside of it. And I'm going to have you, Katie, help along with this and see what happens. So I'm going to go over and open up here again. Now we can reuse. I'm going to close all my other code spaces here that I have. So I'm just going to go ahead and like end these here. And if you don't want that code space around, you can on the bottom left down here, bring up that. And I'm just going to say stop current code space. And it's going to exit that out. If you also exit it, it'll also close it out too. But the one that we're building the Blazor app in, we can just kind of close it out and it'll stop Supreme Succotash, whatever it named it there, which is great. But if we come back over here, you may already notice that the first code space we were working in stopped itself because code space is time out. So you can create a new one, or you can just say restart code space here. And this is going to boot up our code space that we have. And I'm going to go ahead and get out of that one. And it's going to bring us right back in. So it's going to take a few seconds to reboot things up, and get us back into the code space. But that is basically really great because you don't want to use all your code space minutes, right? If it's on, it's just like leaving your computer on, it's on, and those are valuable minutes. So the code space says, oh, you haven't used this in 5 minutes. I'm just going to pause it for you, basically. And only because it takes so minimal amount of time to come back up, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We have to build rock, paper, scissors. Katie, how do you want to do it? What's going on here?
All right. Well, number one, I'm a crowdsourcer. So if anyone wants to give us suggestions, feel free. But I think we should start out with my previous suggestion. Let's open up that chat and let's ask it how it would approach this and what steps we could follow.
Okay. Well, let's get our code space up.
Yeah, give it another second or two.
Give it a second. Okay.
And maybe
that's cool because it'll sign in. Yeah.
So is that we already have our rock, paper, scissors kind of project created, right? The shell of a project. We
do. Yes. Okay. Inside the code folder, there's a mini game, and you'll see the solution explorer is going to pop up here. Remember, we had created a new project called skills. And yes, under mini games here, you can open this up. As soon as it opens up, code space is doing its thing. There we go. And there's a program CS. And this one here just says, ready to build a mini game. So that's what you want to see here. And then if you run it, it should just say that. Okay. So what's good is to open it. That's a great point, Katie, because now it has the context of the current file. So you want to ask, what do we want to ask it?
So I think we should ask it, I want to create a rock, paper, scissors game. I'm very specific, where rock beats scissors.
Where rock beats scissors.
Scissors beats paper.
Scissors beats paper.
And paper beats rock.
Paper beats rock, but also lava beats everything.
Okay. Leveling up. And how do we want this to work? Do we want the user to be able to give it a rock, paper, scissors? Or are we playing a computer? What's happening here?
Yeah.
We should specify that too.
Yeah. I would like it so a player is competing against the computer and the player picks only rock, paper, or scissors. So they don't know, right? But could sneakily enter lava
I like the
And
lava element
the
that we're
computer.
adding.
Did you not have that as a kid? Just hot lava, just hot lava. Yeah.
We
And the
had
computer.
different variations. There was always some kind of greater one that could destroy everything. It had different names.
Okay. What else do I need to give it? Any other context?
I think that's good for now, and then we can add more context as we go, but I would specify before you hit
Oh,
enter, can you give me the steps to create this game? Because I don't want it to necessarily
um,
create it all for me, but I want to know what I'm doing here.
I'm going to say in C sharp
In
too.
C
It
sharp.
in
Perfect.
just in case.
It should know.
Okay. It should know.
Exactly, John. Spock, lizard, etc. Also,
Mm,
someone in the chat is asking, is this being recorded? Yes, it is. You
uh-huh.
can find it on the .NET YouTube channel when we're done here.
Wow. Okay. So what it's recommending, it's like, here's the proposed structure here. It actually just told me like,
Oh,
it did give me the steps, but I think it's actually going to be like, can you explain the steps to create this game and what each file would be doing? Now, what's interesting is it like literally wants to create the entire thing. So that's kind of cool. But I'm going to ask it, don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah,
Teach me.
exactly. Teach me. Sure. Okay.
Sure.
There we go. Okay, perfect. Step 1, create the project structure. So it's going to say that it wants this project structure of program, game, player, computer. Initialize the project. Okay, so this is actually like, I'm going to pull this all out.
Yeah.
Whoa. So this
I
would be
don't know
like
if this
the
is
commands.
cheating because now we know exactly what to do.
Exactly. So this is going to show me, yeah, ready to build a game. It's going to create a new game, and then it's going to output it. And that's going to be in like the program file. So notice here that I could actually apply this code. So it is going to show me what I'm going to do here. And the game. So this is just telling me like what the game would do. So there's player and a computer and then a start. And this is going to ask it to enter its choice down here. Let me make this even bigger.
And there's a couple things we didn't specify, and I'm interested to see what choices it gives us and how we can change that as we go. For example, are we just doing one round and it's over, or are we doing multiple rounds and we want to keep track of the points that you're earning?
Oh, yeah.
You
Oh,
know,
that's a
it
good
looks like
idea.
one round.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So this is going to go through. It's going to read everything in here. That's cool. Okay, so let's do this. Can we add these files to the mini game project that already exists? Cool. Let's see if that works in there. All right, cool. So it's going to be like, hey, here's what you need to do. So I'm going to hit create workspace. I don't want to do that. Let's just add the files, question mark. I kind of put question mark in it. Okay. Oh, okay, cool. There you go.
Okay, perfect. It sensed the tone.
It sensed the tone. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's see what it's going to do. So now it's going to show me all the code that it just had.
I notice you can add these like one at a time, or I believe at the end it'll say add all.
Okay.
But if one looks correct and the others don't, for example, you can just add that one. I think it'll let us do them all. Oh, maybe not. Oh, wait. Yeah. At the bottom.
Because I'm in chat. I'm not in edits mode, I don't think.
But it's letting you. Oh, interesting. But yeah, we can start adding.
Okay, let's just add it in the chat window here. So I'm going to go and I'm going to say, okay, let's do it. I don't even know what these are. Insert a cursor copy. Okay, I'm going to insert it. Cool. Did it.
Cool.
Now it says I don't have a game. So let's go ahead and insert that. Now here it's going to say, where do you want to put the new file? So I do want to put it in the mini game file. Perfect. That's good. All right. And then player. Let's do player.
And I kind of like the order in which it's suggesting we add these things, because you could imagine this is kind of what you would want to do normally as you're creating your game.
Build and run the game. That's kind of cool. Look at this. I can actually run the terminal command. So it's going to try to build it. I'll see if it actually can figure out where it's at. Actually, know if it knows. Oh, I'm going to say I have this CD. Let's ls it. CD code, CD minigame. Going to run it now. Oh.
Wait, go into the files.
Oh, it's because I'm in.
I'll go up.
Oh, CD code, CD minigame. Okay, cool.
There you go.
So then I can run these commands. Although I could just like, hit the run button.
Yeah.
Too. Okay, it looks like there's some errors. That's cool. Let's see what we got going on here. Don't look so bad. Let's go to our mini game. So we got our.
Yeah, let's check it out.
Oh, I should probably accept. I got to accept that command there. So it looks good. And good. Let's build it. Got a lot of windows happening here. Big windows. This is exactly how I code, by the way. So it's not actually a surprise. Okay, so I'm gonna go in. I'm just gonna run it and let's see what happens. We haven't really told it too much.
We're just seeing its initial take on the whole thing. Oh, enter your choice.
Enter your choice. So I'm gonna say, what do you want?
I want paper.
Paper. It's a tie.
No way. Okay. Oh, it does let you play again. Okay. So it already kind of knew.
And let's move I'm going to remove
do something like sock. Do something that's not there. I want to see how much.
No.
Oh. Okay.
.NET bot. No. Do scissors. Oh, computer wins paper. All right, cool. No. Cool. It's like, you're going to say a good goodbye message. That's funny. Well, let's ask it. I'm going to go into edits mode and I'm going to add all the files, right? So I want the computer in there and I want the player in there. And I want to say, don't tell the player they can select lava.
Oh, so it's a secret.
Yeah, it's like a secret, right? So I'm going to remove that option, but I'm going to see what it does, right? So it's going to
rock, paper, scissors, cheat codes.
Yeah. So here it's looking here for, so it's going to say, the choices. It's looking for lava, right? But it did keep the ability to do it. So let's say I come down here and I rerun this. Okay. Over here. And if I say, it's also, maybe I didn't save it. Oh, so see, it still says or lava, right? Here. So I could say, allow the user to enter lava, but don't tell them they can use it. Let's see what it does. Okay. There you go.
Okay.
So now it's like allowed to use lava without explicitly doing. Now it's going to generate these things. Okay. So now let's put it back in. So actually, like it was bad before. Like it shouldn't have allowed it. But
Copilot's not perfect. Always check your work.
Yep. Let's do modify. Accept that. Say modify the original prompt to the user and remove lava as an option that they see. I don't know. Let's see. I'm not actually sure which file is there. Let's see. It's only in the player one. I think it's going to be in the. Let me go ahead and like re-add the working set here. Players, game, computer. Okay. Let's try that again. Maybe I'll try a different model. Let's see.
I believe Copilot Edits does let you add multiple files to the question in the chat.
Oh yeah, you know what? You're right. It should.
See, even there, like the plus add files ... I think that'll let you.
Yeah, it should be in my working set.
Yeah.
Here. Oh, there we go. Okay. Here. Okay, it found it. So here we go. Or scissor. Okay, perfect. I'll accept that. Okay, cool. What else do we want it to do, Katie?
So I want it to keep track of points. I want to know if I'm winning.
Yeah, and display a cool ASCII leaderboard after each round.
James is one-upping every time. He's like, and lava, and ASCII leaderboard.
Yeah, why not? Let's see. I don't know what it's gonna do. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so this is hopefully cool. Let's see what it does. So it's gonna look at the game file. So it's gonna tell me what it's gonna do. So it's gonna add a player score, computer score, determine winner. Whoa, you get 3 points for using lava, 2 points for normally, and 1 for win. Wow, lava is special.
I like that. But then what happens if a lava hits a lava?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that just a tie?
I'm just going to accept everything. Oh, only allow the user or computer to use lava once.
Oh,
ever.
I like that.
You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I love it.
This reminds me of that game. Did you ever play this where it's like a hand game where you can take each turn, you can either shield, hit, or reload, and you're playing with somebody else? This is exactly like that, but all with Copilot.
Cool. All right, so I'm just going to accept everything. I blindly trust it in this instance specifically. But
so we're doing exactly what we're telling you not to do.
Yeah. But we can see here we have a player score, a computer score, a lava score. It's really hard with my big text to review all of it. That's the only problem. And here, yeah, so we're allowing, and there's a play again, and then there's determined score. So we're going to see if the player is lava, as long as the lava hasn't used. And then here they get some points. Oh, else. Whoa.
Else you lose points?
Wow.
Wait, that's crazy.
Wow. Crazy. That's great. Okay, cool. It's a tie.
I like that.
Yeah, that's great. You lose, you win, and there's the score. Oh, cool. Nice. Okay, let's that's cool. All right, let's run it.
I love that it's way more creative than us. It's
way
like
better,
not only can you use it once, but you get deducted, or your enemy gets points.
You get points. Okay, let's see here. Enter your choice. Rock, paper, scissors, Katie.
Lava straight out the gate. Let's do it.
Oh my gosh. Lava. Boom.
Boom.
Got 3 points. Yeah, and it almost had a perfect. That's going to be hard for it to adjust. That's
almost. Whoa.
Wow.
Confetti.
Oh my god, that wasn't Copilot. That'd be cool though.
That would be crazy.
That was probably like Jamie or someone in the chat. Was it you? Oh, was that? All right. Let's play again. Rock, paper, scissors.
You choose.
All right, paper. We'll go paper. No. I chose the scissors. Okay, one more round. Best of 3. All right, your pick.
Okay, I'm gonna say, let's do rock, because we rock. But
we win!
Oh,
yes.
Boom.
Amazing. Okay.
Fantastic.
Katie, we did it.
We did it.
All right. That's GitHub Copilot. That's only like scratching the surface, Katie. Like there's so much more.
There's way more. We showed you as much as we could fit into this tiny demo, but there's a ton more. Definitely check out the resources we linked, because there's a lot of good stuff in there. And like we mentioned earlier, check out the blogs. So the Visual Studio blog. Is there an explicit GitHub blog as well, or GitHub Copilot?
I think it's like github.blog.
Perfect. Because there's so much. Not only today did we only scratch the surface, but they're putting so much new stuff in all the time that you want to stay up to date with.
Yeah, probably my favorite actually is the GitHub changelog. If you search for GitHub changelog, I think that is it's a separate blog. So it's github.blog/changelog. I'll post it in the link here. And you have that. And that's going to give you updates. So like best places to look, and good question from the chat, like on different IDs. So we're obviously using VS Code here, but GitHub Copilot works like everywhere. It works in the browser, it works in a code space, it works in NeoVim. It works in and JetBrains IDEs. It works in Visual Studio. It works in Xcode. It works everywhere, right? It works in a Windows terminal. There's all these places for it. And yeah, the changelog blog is really good. But also keep up to date with the blog of the IDE that you're using. So the VS Code blog, the VS Code YouTube, the Visual Studio YouTube, the Visual Studio blog, because you'll get updates there as well. Because there's obviously different integrations. You'll see different things and when those things are announced. So for example, when different models are released, they'll be added here and they'll tell you where they're available. And then you'll see different product updates blogs as well. Woof, we did it, Katie. Now we're back on the screen.
We're back here. I know.
We did it.
I feel successful. I feel great.
Good. I feel amazing. And I'm going on break. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Katie, thanks for pair programming with me.
Of course.
And being my co-pilot for the co-pilot.
I was the co-pilot.
Co-pilot. Co-captain. Co-captain.
Co-captain, yeah.
Co-captain. I love it. Yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed this. I hope that you guys built some stuff. Go and finish out your rock, paper, scissors. Get that badge. Share it on socials. Hit us up as well. We'd love to see it. And thanks everyone so much. Now, don't forget, if you have friends all over the world, Let's Learn.net. This is the first one in the series, is broadcast in a bunch of different languages. We put out a blog for this event. We just updated this morning with new worldwide events. So I'm going to drop this into the chat here. But at the bottom, what you're going to see is that the event is going to be coming up in March in a bunch of different languages around the world. So like Vietnamese and French and Spanish and Turkish and Portuguese and a lot more in local time zones too. So if you have friends around, share it with you. Or if you're like, hey, actually, this was great in English, but I speak Spanish, so I'd love to see it in Spanish, right? So definitely check that out as well and share it out. And this video is on demand, ready to go. And definitely check out the rest of that workshop. There's another module after rock, paper, scissors where you can learn about Azure deployments as well. So definitely appreciate it. That's it. Gonna do it, Katie. What do you think?
Cool. I think enjoy the rest of your day, everybody, and try out GitHub Copilot free.
All right. Talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.